At the trial, my younger sister hired her own lawyer to prove I was broke. My parents said they had given me every opportunity. Mom burst into tears. Dad nodded in agreement. My lawyer stayed perfectly calm until Judge Quinn paused and said, "I've reviewed the asset and tax records. Someone in this courtroom is lying to my face. We gave you every chance, and you wasted it all." My mother, Joan Larson, sobbed dramatically, dabbing at perfectly dry eyes with a designer handkerchief, while the entire federal bankruptcy courtroom in Salt Lake City watched in silence. My father, Donald Larson, sat beside her, jaw clenched in calculated disappointment, nodding gravely as their lawyer laid out the documents claiming I owed my younger sister $2 million. I'm Whitney Irwin, founder and CEO of Summit Guard Technologies. Today I sat at the defendant's table in a simple but expensive gray suit next to my lawyer, Emily Castro, who remained completely composed even as the other side put on their performance. The lawyer hired by my sister stood up, voice full of confidence. My company was on the verge of collapse, unable to repay the large investment she had made years earlier on behalf of the family under an internal agreement authorized by our parents, and the court needed to step in to protect her as creditor. Everyone in the room leaned forward. My sister sat straight-backed, a faint, victorious smile playing on her young face. Then Judge Quinn suddenly stopped reading the petition. He removed his glasses, scanned the newly submitted asset and tax records more closely, and looked up. His voice carried clearly through the silent courtroom. "I've reviewed the asset and tax records. Someone in this courtroom is lying to my face." My sister's confident smile vanished instantly. Mom's tears stopped as if on cue. Dad froze. I sat there quietly, waiting for the moment I had prepared for over the past 10 years. Have you ever had a close family member downplay, or even try to undermine the success you worked so hard for? Drop your story in the comments below. I read them all, and would love to hear how you handled it. Like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because this story is just getting started. I stood silently in the courtroom, waiting for the moment I had prepared for over the past 10 long years. The roots of this showdown went back to our family home in Salt Lake City, Utah, where the Larsons had built a name in real estate and mountain resource development. My father, Donald Larson, owned one of the largest firms in the region, dealing in land acquisition, mining rights, and high-end resort projects across the Wasatch Range. He had started small after college, but expanded aggressively, turning family connections into multi-million-dollar deals that shaped ski towns and protected vistas alike. Mother Joan Larson focused on social standing, chairing charity boards, hosting galas at the country club, and ensuring our name appeared in local society pages. From the beginning, my younger sister Grace was the favored one. As the baby of the family, born 8 years after me, she received attention that I never did. Dad often took her along to meetings with partners, even when she was still in high school. I remember one summer when she was 16. He brought her to a negotiation lunch at a downtown steakhouse, introducing her as the future of Larson Enterprises, while the executives chuckled approvingly. "This one has the instinct," he'd say, patting her hand. "She'll take it all further than I ever could." He bought her whatever she needed to prepare private tutors for business classes, a new luxury SUV for her 18th birthday, internships at the firm, where she shadowed him directly. Partners knew her by name, and Dad made sure she sat in on strategy sessions, learning how to read market trends for mountain properties. It wasn't subtle. He saw in Grace the perfect blend of charm and ambition to carry the traditional family business forward without rocking the boat. I had taken a different path. After undergrad, I enrolled in law school at the University of Utah, thinking it would align with Dad's world of contracts and land deals. But during my second year, I became obsessed with sustainable tech, specifically software that could monitor and protect mountain resources in real time, preventing overuse while supporting development. I spent nights researching AI models for tracking snowpack melt, soil erosion, and wildlife corridors. The potential felt huge tools that could help federal agencies like the BLM make better decisions. When I turned 25, I put together a full business plan for Summit Guard Technologies and presented it to Dad in his corner office overlooking the city. The room smelled of leather and polished wood trophies from closed deals lining the shelves. I laid out the projections, the market gap for precise resource monitoring in rugged terrains, and how it could partner with government contracts. He flipped through the pages, chuckling halfway. "This is a nice hobby, Whitney, but it's a pipe dream. Tech like this, it's not stable. Stick to what we know: real land, real assets." He leaned back, gesturing around the office. "Come work here properly. Support Grace. She's the one who'll inherit the core business. You can handle legal for us. Keep things in the family." I pushed back, explaining the demand from environmental regs and federal land management. "There's real money in sustainable solutions, Dad. This isn't just an experiment." He shook his head, smile fading into that familiar stern look. "You're throwing away a solid future for computer nonsense. Grace understands the legacy. Help her build it instead of chasing fantasies that'll leave you broke." The argument escalated. Mother joined, siding with him, as always, worrying aloud about appearances. "What will people think if our daughter drops out for some startup?" Grace, home from college that weekend, listened quietly, but with a satisfied glint, knowing her position was secure. I stood firm. "I'm not coming back to play second fiddle. I'll do this on my own." Dad's final words were cold. "Fine. But when it fails, and it will, you'll crawl back. And then, you'll take whatever role Grace offers." I walked out of that office, out of the house, and never asked for their approval or a dime again. The door closed behind me with a finality that echoed through the years to come. I packed everything into my used Subaru and drove up into the foothills outside Salt Lake City, renting a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a quiet complex near the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon. The place was basic: thin walls, outdated kitchen, and a view of the mountains that reminded me why I was doing this. Rent took half my savings in the first month, but the location gave me constant access to the terrain I wanted to protect and monitor. Those early days blurred into endless work sessions. I taught myself to code from scratch, starting with online tutorials on Python and geospatial libraries. Nights were spent poring over federal regulations, the Bureau of Land Management guidelines, environmental impact statements, and public land use policies that governed millions of acres across the West. I printed stacks of documents, highlighted sections on data requirements for resource monitoring, and built spreadsheets modeling snowmelt patterns from publicly available USGS sensors. Money ran low fast. I took freelance gigs writing basic reports for small environmental nonprofits just to cover groceries and internet bills. Coffee became my fuel. Sleep was secondary. The laptop fan whirred constantly as I developed the first prototype, an app that pulled satellite imagery and ground sensor data to predict erosion risks on ski resort slopes and public trails. That prototype was my breakthrough hope. I pitched it to a potential partner I met through an online founder forum, a guy who claimed connections with outdoor industry investors. We met at a coffee shop in Sandy, and he seemed enthusiastic, offering to co-develop and introduce me to funding sources. I shared the full code repository and detailed designs, trusting the handshake agreement. Weeks later, radio silence. Then I saw my exact interface and algorithms launched under his new company name at a regional tech conference. He had taken everything filed for a provisional patent using my work and cut me out completely. The $15,000 were nearly gone by then, and that theft left me with nothing but screenshots and emails that proved nothing legally binding. I didn't quit. I rewrote the core from memory, making it better, adding machine learning layers to forecast water runoff more accurately. Months of isolation followed testing algorithms against historical BLM reports on flood risks in the Wasatch Backcountry. I scraped by on instant meals and determination, applying for small grants aimed at women in STEM, though most got rejected for lack of a proven track record. The second major setback hit harder. By then, I had hired one part-time contractor and secured a pilot project proposal with the BLM regional office in Utah. The plan was to deploy sensors across a test section of public land near Alta, feeding real-time data into my platform for better avalanche forecasting and resource allocation. I poured every remaining resource into field testing, driving up canyons in winter storms to install prototypes calibrating against official weather stations. The rejection came in a formal letter: insufficient on-site trial data over multiple seasons, no independent verification of accuracy in variable mountain conditions. They praised the concept but deemed it too early stage for federal partnership. Overnight, the contractor left for a stable job. Investors I had lined up pulled out, and bills piled up. Bank account dipped below $1,000. For the first time, I sat in that small apartment staring at eviction notices, wondering if Dad had been right. That year, Mom still sent the annual Thanksgiving invitation tradition, she said. I drove down to the family home one last time. The table was set elaborately, turkey carved, everyone in their holiday best. Conversation stayed light until Grace, then home from college, turned to me with that confident tone she had already mastered. "So how's the little tech project going? Dad says these startups usually crash within the first few years." The words landed exactly as intended. I looked around the table, no defense, just polite, waiting for my response. Something snapped quietly inside. I finished the meal in silence, thanked them, and left before dessert. On the drive back up the canyon, I made the decision: no more contact, no more energy spent justifying myself. From that night on, I poured everything into Summit Guard. No family updates, no holiday visits, no explanations. The isolation sharpened my focus like nothing else could. The company became my sole priority, refining the algorithms, gathering independent data sets, preparing for the day when the technology would stand undeniable on its own. The turning point came quietly: a small contract with the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources to monitor habitat changes along the Provo River corridor. It wasn't glamorous, just enough revenue to hire my first full-time developer and rent a modest office space downtown. We refined the platform, integrating more accurate LiDAR data for elevation modeling and partnering with local universities for validation studies on watershed health. Word spread in state agency circles. Soon, we secured pilots with the Utah Department of Natural Resources for tracking recreational impact on public lands near Moab and St. George. These projects proved the system's reliability: real-time alerts on trail erosion, water quality shifts from runoff, and illegal off-road activity detected via satellite cross-checks. Revenue grew steadily, allowing us to expand the team to 8 people and upgrade servers for faster processing. I married Christopher during this phase, a quiet ceremony in Park City, with only close colleagues present. From then on, I used Irwin professionally for all press releases, conference panels, and award submissions. It wasn't about hiding from the world, just creating clear separation from the Larson name that still carried weight in traditional real estate networks. Interviews in local tech journals referred to me as Whitney Irwin, CEO of Summit Guard Technologies, and no one connected the dots back to the family I had left behind. The big breakthrough arrived after relentless proposal revisions and demonstrations at federal workshops in Denver. Summit Guard won a $100 million multi-year contract with the Bureau of Land Management to deploy our AI monitoring system across mountain resource zones nationwide, from the Rockies to the Sierras and beyond. The scope was massive, installing sensor networks, integrating with existing government databases, and providing dashboards for decision-makers on everything from grazing permits to wildfire risk mitigation. Media coverage followed quickly. A feature in a regional business magazine highlighted how a Utah-based startup was revolutionizing public land stewardship. National outlets picked up the story, praising the innovative use of machine learning for conservation without restricting access. I spoke at industry events under my married name, accepted awards on stage as Whitney Irwin, and watched the company valuation climb. Across town, in the Larson family home, Grace overheard Dad mentioning a new partner named Irwin during a dinner discussion about competing land deals. He complained that some federal projects were now requiring advanced environmental monitoring from vendors like this Irwin-led firm, complicating his traditional development timelines. Grace noted the name casually at first. Later, alone in her room, she searched public contract databases out of curiosity, something she often did to stay ahead on industry trends for the family business. The BLM award announcement popped up immediately. Summit Guard Technologies, led by CEO Whitney Irwin. Cross-referencing the company founding documents and old news clippings took only minutes. The realization hit hard. This was her sister's work, built from nothing into a federal contractor outshining their legacy operations. The shock turned to resentment over weeks. Grace saw headlines celebrating the innovative woman reshaping resource management, while her own role remained tied to Dad's aging model of land sales and leases. Her position as heir apparent suddenly felt vulnerable. Partners started asking Dad about adopting similar tech solutions to stay competitive. She began planting doubts at family dinners, suggesting the success was temporary, that federal contracts were fragile and often overhyped. Mom listened sympathetically. Dad grumbled about upstart disruption. Grace proposed a solution framed as concern. They could rescue the situation by forcing accountability on an old internal investment. She reminded them of the $2 million they had transferred through her account years earlier, intended as family support routed discreetly for potential early backing. Though never formally invested, she argued it could be positioned as an unpaid loan now that the company appeared solvent. Convincing them took time, but not much effort. The narrative fit their long-standing view. Intervention was needed to save me from eventual collapse and preserve family reputation. Grace took charge of finding a lawyer willing to file on grounds of that alleged debt-gathering, fabricated records to support the claim of default. The plan was set to file for bankruptcy protection on behalf of the creditor, triggering scrutiny that would delay or derail the BLM rollout before anyone realized the true scale of Summit Guard's stability. A thick envelope from the federal court arrived at the office one morning, marked urgent. I sliced it open at my desk, expecting routine compliance paperwork. Instead, it was a bankruptcy petition filed against Summit Guard Technologies, claiming the company was insolvent and owed $2 million to a creditor who had invested early and never been repaid. The creditor listed Grace Larson. My stomach dropped. I read the name twice, then scanned the attached documents, loan agreements dated years back. Signatures that looked vaguely like mine, financial statements showing massive losses that bore no resemblance to reality. It alleged a family-backed investment routed through Grace's account for tax reasons, now in default. Shock hit first, then a wave of disbelief. Grace, my own sister, had gone this far. I had built everything without a cent from them, yet here was a fabricated claim designed to force court oversight and halt operations. I called Emily Castro immediately. She had handled our federal contract compliance from the start and knew every detail of the company's finances. I scanned and emailed the filing while still on the line. Emily's voice stayed professional but edged with concern as she reviewed. "This is blatant fraud, Whitney. Forged signatures, invented accounts, timelines that don't match any real transactions. We can dismantle it with audited statements and bank records alone." She paused. "But here's the risk: the petition itself creates complications. Even if dismissed quickly, the filing becomes public record. It could trigger reviews from BLM partners, delay funding disbursements, or scare off private investors. And if the judge assigned has any local ties to established families like yours, they might drag it out for appearances." Her warning sank in. Utah's business community was tight-knit. Old money networks overlapped with judicial appointments. A prolonged case could stall our nationwide rollout at the worst possible moment. I drove home early that day, mind racing. Christopher was in the kitchen when I walked in, sensing something wrong immediately. I handed him the papers without a word. He read in silence, face tightening with each page. "This is insane," he said finally. "Your own sister. After everything you built independently." We sat at the table late into the evening talking it through. The betrayal stung deepest, Grace positioning herself as the wronged party using family history as a weapon. Christopher worried aloud about the practical fallout: sensor deployments scheduled across 3 states, new hires, onboarding grant milestones due. Any hold on payments could force layoffs or missed deadlines, damaging credibility we had fought years to earn. We agreed on aggressive defense. Over the following days, Emily coordinated a full response package. Big Four audited financials showed healthy reserves and revenue growth. Forensic handwriting experts compared the petition signatures against dozens of my known samples, concluding no match. Bank records from every account, personal and corporate, proved 0 transfers matching the claimed amount or timing. Christopher helped organize timelines, pulling old emails and tax filings to establish I had never accepted family funds post-departure. We even prepared affidavits from early team members confirming self-funding origins. The court date approached. On the morning of the hearing, I arrived at the federal building downtown with boxes of evidence. Emily walked beside me, calm and prepared. Across the aisle, my family entered like a coordinated unit. Grace led, dressed sharply, directing her lawyer with quiet instructions and confident nods. Mother wore somber colors, expression carefully arranged in pained disappointment. Father sat erect, projecting the image of a patriarch forced to clean up a wayward child's mess. The session began. Grace's attorney rose dramatically, painting a picture of irresponsible mismanagement and an unpaid internal family loan now jeopardizing a creditor's rights. He referenced the generous support routed for legitimate business purposes now ignored despite repeated requests. I watched their performance, pulse steady but anger simmering beneath. Emily remained composed, waiting her turn. The courtroom filled steadily, the low hum of voices mixing with the rustle of papers and the occasional cough. I took my place at the defendant's table, Christopher beside me, his hand resting lightly on mine. Emily sat on my other side, organized stacks of exhibits in front of her, calm and focused. Across the aisle, Grace entered first, her lawyer close behind. She wore a tailored blazer and carried herself with the same quiet confidence she had shown at family dinners. Mother followed in a dark dress, dabbing her eyes with a tissue even before sitting down. Father came last, posture rigid, giving the impression of a man reluctantly attending to a difficult family matter. The bailiff called the session to order. Judge Quinn entered, nodded to everyone, and took the bench. Grace's attorney stood immediately, voice projecting clearly through the room. "Your Honor, the petitioner, Grace Larson, seeks immediate bankruptcy protection for Summit Guard Technologies. The company is insolvent and has failed to repay a $2 million loan advanced years ago through an internal family arrangement. The creditor has suffered significant financial harm." He gestured toward a stack of documents. "We have loan agreements, promissory notes, and correspondence showing the debt was acknowledged but never repaid. The company's recent federal contract does not change its underlying financial distress." Mother let out a soft sob at the mention of financial distress. Father gave a slow, solemn nod. Grace kept her gaze forward, lips pressed in a line of righteous certainty. Emily remained seated, expression neutral, letting them finish the performance. When the attorney sat, Judge Quinn leaned forward. "Counsel for the respondent." Emily rose smoothly. "Your Honor, we have filed a comprehensive response and request to dismiss with prejudice. Before we proceed, I ask the court to review the supplemental asset and tax records submitted last night." Judge Quinn nodded to the clerk. A few minutes passed while he flipped through the new pages. The room grew quieter as he read. Then he stopped, removed his glasses, and looked directly at Grace's table. "I've reviewed the asset and tax records. Someone in this courtroom is lying to my face." Grace's shoulders stiffened. Mother's tissue froze mid-air. Father's jaw tightened. Emily stepped forward. "Your Honor, we have 3 primary pieces of evidence that demonstrate the petition is fraudulent." She projected the first exhibit on the screen. The signatures on the alleged loan documents do not match any known samples of Whitney Irwin's handwriting. Forensic analysis by a certified examiner shows clear discrepancies in stroke patterns and pressure. Every signature is forged. Next slide. The claimed investment date falls during Ms. Grace Larson's sophomore year at college. Bank records from that period show no large outgoing transfers from her accounts, nor any corresponding deposits into the company. Final slide. The account number listed as receiving the funds never existed in any bank records associated with Summit Guard Technologies or the Larson family. It appears to have been invented for this filing. Christopher squeezed my hand. I felt his steady presence beside me. Grace's face drained of color. The confident tilt of her chin disappeared. Mother's sobs stopped abruptly as though someone had flipped a switch. Father stared straight ahead, skin pale. Judge Quinn set the documents down. "Ms. Castro, do you have anything further?" Emily shook her head. "That is the essence, Your Honor. The petition contains no legitimate debt, no real investment, and no basis for bankruptcy relief. We ask the court to dismiss with prejudice and refer the matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation of bankruptcy fraud and potential interference with a federal contractor." Judge Quinn looked over the room, then fixed his gaze on Grace's table. "The court finds the petition lacks merit and is based on fabricated evidence. The case is dismissed with prejudice. The clerk is directed to forward all materials to the U.S. Attorney's Office for appropriate action. This court will not tolerate attempts to misuse bankruptcy proceedings to interfere with a federal contract or to perpetrate fraud." The gavel came down sharply. Grace sat, frozen eyes wide. Mother stared at the floor. Father's hands gripped the table edge, knuckles white. Emily turned to me with a small, relieved nod. Christopher exhaled, his grip on my hand loosening for the first time all morning. I felt the weight of the past 10 years lift slightly, though the anger still burned beneath. The courtroom began to clear, but the real consequences were only beginning. Federal investigators moved quickly once the referral landed on their desk. Agents interviewed Grace's lawyer, first laying out the evidence of fraud and the potential for disbarment if he didn't cooperate. Facing serious consequences, he turned over emails, draft documents, and recordings of meetings where Grace had outlined the plan in detail, framing it as necessary to protect family interests from my supposed impending failure. The full picture emerged. Grace had orchestrated everything from fabricating the old loan papers to coaching mother and father on their courtroom roles. Prosecutors built a solid case for bankruptcy fraud, perjury, and attempted interference with a government contract. Grace's options narrowed fast. Her attorney negotiated a plea deal to avoid trial and harsher sentencing. She accepted probation, a permanent federal felony record that would follow her for life, substantial fines that drained her personal savings, and restitution orders. Most stinging for her father, formally revised his estate plans and company succession documents, removing her from any executive role or significant inheritance tied to the business. The golden child status evaporated overnight. The fallout spread to the family firm. News of the scandal traveled through Utah's tight real estate circles. Major clients, developers with pending resort projects, requested audits of their partnerships. Several pulled out entirely, citing reputational risk. Banks tightened credit lines after reading press reports. Father spent months trying to stabilize operations, but cash flow suffered as deals stalled. over the following year, more partners distanced themselves. A key joint venture in Park City collapsed when the other side invoked a morality clause. Revenue dropped sharply. Father aged visibly, working longer hours to salvage relationships that had taken decades to build. Eventually, with no viable recovery path, he accepted an offer from a larger regional competitor and sold the company at a fraction of its former valuation. The Larson name lost its dominance in mountain development. Mother sent a letter about 8 months after the plea. It arrived handwritten on heavy stationery, 12 pages justifying their actions. She wrote about concern for my well-being, fear that the tech world would ruin me, and how Grace had convinced them intervention was the only way to bring me home. Phrases like "we only wanted what was best" and "family should stick together in tough times" filled the pages. No direct apology, just regret that things had escalated. I read it once, then set it aside without reply. The final confrontation happened in the courthouse hallway, right after sentencing confirmation. My family lingered near a bench, speaking in low voices. Grace looked smaller, eyes downcast. Mother clutched tissues. Father stood with slumped shoulders. I approached with Christopher at my side. They turned as I stopped a few feet away. "Mr. Larson, Mrs. Larson, Grace." The formal names hung in the air. Mother flinched. Father met my gaze briefly before looking away. "I assume you understand the role you each played in this," I said evenly. "The fraud, the lies, the attempt to destroy what I built." Father started Whitney. It was mostly, I cut him off. "Don't. Grace led it, but you supported her. You chose to believe I would fail, rather than admit you were wrong." Mother whispered, "We thought we were protecting you. Protection doesn't involve forged documents in federal court." I kept my voice steady. "The consequences you're facing now are yours alone." Grace finally spoke, voice small. "I didn't think it would go this far. But it did. And I'm done." I turned to leave, then paused. "Don't contact me again. Don't reach out to Christopher or anyone connected to Summit Guard. We are no longer family in any way that matters." No one followed as we walked away. That hallway marked the absolute end. No more invitations, no more letters, no more pretense. We expanded steadily after the courtroom chaos faded. New offices opened in Denver and Boise to support field teams deploying sensors across broader federal lands. Staff grew past 200 engineers, data scientists, policy experts, all drawn to the mission of balancing conservation with responsible access. Follow-on contracts with the BLM and other agencies rolled in, totaling billions over multi-year terms for nationwide implementation and ongoing maintenance. Christopher and I designed our home ourselves, a modern mountain-style house nestled in the hills above Park City, with wide windows framing the peaks. We moved in just before Presley arrived, a healthy girl with dark hair and curious eyes. Life settled into a rhythm of board meetings, family dinners, and quiet evenings watching sunsets from the deck. I often held Presley in the nursery at dusk, rocking gently while she drifted toward sleep. The room smelled of baby lotion and fresh laundry, soft light filtering through sheer curtains. One evening, as she gripped my finger with surprising strength, I whispered stories, not fairy tales, but truths about chasing what matters. "You'll try things that scare you," I told her softly, "and some people might say it's impossible or unwise. But the ones who matter will cheer every step, even the stumbles." She cooed, eyes half closed. I thought about the team celebrations after each contract, when late nights turned into laughter over pizza, colleagues texting congratulations at odd hours because they genuinely cared. Those were the people I chose to surround us with. No word ever came from the Larsons. No cards, no calls, no attempts at reconciliation. The silence was complete, and I welcomed it. Presley would never know the weight of conditional approval or the sting of favoritism. Her world would be filled with encouragement to explore, fail, and try again, backed by unwavering support. I placed her in the crib, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. This child would grow up believing her ideas had value simply because they were hers. She'd learn that real family celebrates wins without jealousy and stands firm through setbacks. That's the legacy I built, not from old money or inherited position, but from persistence and the freedom to choose who belongs in your life. Success isn't just contracts or headlines. It's creating an environment where the next generation starts stronger than you ever did. They tried to prove I was the failure they always predicted. Instead, they showed the cost of refusing to grow. While their world shrank, mine expanded, proving that determination paired with people who truly lift you up outpowers doubt every time.